Welcome to our Sunday Night Live Chat. Every Sunday, we take a deep dive into learning how to live an optimal life, how to manifest your full human potential, where I do the best I can to answer all your questions and question all of your answers. I'd really like you to chat in at any time with your questions and your comments. I want to know what your interests are, what your opinions are, what your concerns are. So throughout the course of the evening, please chat in. If you have a Gmail account, that's going to allow you rather to participate actively. If you're feeling, oh, I don't have a Gmail account, you can do that right away. The site will guide you immediately. You get a Gmail account and you can participate. At the very least, you can listen to the broadcast this evening. So tonight's chat is the second part of what we started last week. And last week we began this exploration of superheroes and supervillains. And I know it's kind of a big thing right now, and it kind of always has been, to tell you the truth, in our movies, in our comics, and our stories, in our movies, and in everything. Superheroes, supervillains. And maybe right now is a really good time to just bust in and tell me who your favorite superhero or supervillain is. This is a good place. It might give me some frame of reference to draw the conversation into things that are pertinent to you. Who's your supervillain favorite? Who's your superhero favorite? So last week I talked about the supervillain. What is it? What are the characteristics of a supervillain? What is it? What makes a supervillain? Maybe to recap a little bit, some of you may not have been with us last week. So I described a supervillain in the movies and our stories as these usually people, humans. It really makes a supervillain when it's a human. Who've been working primarily out of their intellectual capacity, their brain power, their emotions, these things, what we call the ego self. These characters have often a really super intellectual capacity, like the evil genius. They have a high-tech advantage. Sometimes they've invented suits of armor, suits of power, or whatever. They've invented these machines of mass destruction. Sometimes super wealth is a component of their power. Very often, though, with the supervillain, there has been some deformity of their ego identity, and maybe a physical deformity. Maybe they were part of a science experiment or medical experiment that went awry and they became deformed. Ultimately, though, what has resulted is a deformity of the mind and the emotions. Now, I'm really cutting to the chase here. I do want to say that if you want to get a full expose about what makes a supervillain, go back to last week's chat. It's recorded. It's in our playlist, our video playlist. Go back and get the full opening of what we talked about. It was the supervillain. I'm kind of giving you the highlights right now. The supervillain is that human who does not exhibit the ability of the range of motion to be compassionate or make wise decisions. They have all this intellectual capability, all this, I say, creative ability. They can make systems, they can make weapons, they can make all these things, but how they determine to leverage them, how to use them, is coming right out of their emotions and the fluctuations of their thoughts. They're capable of wielding power without real compassion or wise oversights. They don't have any brakes on this. Okay. We also discussed last week that this villainous type behavior in real life, because the whole purpose here is to examine the villain in fiction and see how it resonates with real villainous behavior in real life, because we're trying to bring it into our lives and do something here. So this behavior in real life is very often most graphically manifested in institutions and systems. Yeah, sometimes we have these bigger than life villainous people, but more often than not, it's institutions and systems that seem to exhibit this this kind of behavior, this villainous behavior. Evil, we talked about last time, resides or hides most easily in institutions than it does in people. I think that's that herd mentality, something that we talked about last week, and it's worth going back and examining. So we did look at what makes a supervillain. So tonight, what we're going to look at is what makes a superhero. Now, I think tonight is so important to you and I because most of us are not supervillains. But we have the opportunity to live a life of a hero, a heroic life. And that's really where I'm going this evening, is that if we can examine what it means to be a hero, what's the difference between the hero and the villain, is that we can start to look at this hero model in our own lives. The hero, what's the difference between the hero and the villain? Let's look at it from the story or the comic book or the movie version. The hero, like the villain, has powers. They have powers. You know, it might be a physical power. They might be strong, or they have a shield, or they have a weapon, or what have you. But the hero, and we did touch on this last week, the hero's main superpower, this is important. This is very important. The hero's main superpower is not of the intellect. It's not of what we call the ego self. It's not, but it's the ability to connect and work out of another side of themselves. What in the tradition I teach, the meditative tradition, it's the authentic self. They're able to connect with that other part of themselves. They're not just working out of their thoughts and their emotions. Hero and villain have maybe even equal powers on an intellectual level. The hero, the villain rather, is locked into acting and reacting out of thoughts and emotions. The hero, on the other hand, has a range of motion to act and respond out of compassion and wisdom, because that hero has the capacity to connect with another part of themselves, to be a complete human. This other part of themselves that we talk about is what we call the authentic self or the observer. It's another level of awareness or consciousness. It's where the hero has learned to access a part of themselves, a part of their awareness that touches on compassion and wisdom. This is what the villain lacks. Initially, being human beings, the villain and the hero experience pain the same way. They have some of the same drives in the beginning, but the villain is locked into being driven by satisfying their fears, their anxieties, their resentment, these fluctuations of the mind, actually, and the emotions, whereas the hero moves past that. We're going to really dig into this in a few minutes. The hero starts in the same place, but the heroic move is to move past that and move into an awareness of compassion and wisdom. So, if you look closely at these stories and these movies, the hero's power comes from their ability to love someone or trying to save others or moving outside of themselves. The villain is always about them. It's always about their power and their gain and their aggrandizement. Whereas the hero may start there, but the hero becoming heroic moves out of the realm of themselves and moves into the realm of others. And we see it all the time. It might be love of a woman or love of a man or love of a family or compassion for their tribe or for their group or whatever. Humanity, save the world, whatever it is. This is the hero moving outside of themselves. We're gonna dig into that in a little bit in just a moment. The opposite of the villain. The villain is about themselves. The hero is about the many. So we realized, and from our discussion last week, is that the villain really is a prototype, is a metaphor for an incomplete, not actualized human. The human being who is not quite formed. He or she is flying on one engine. They're not on all the jets aren't burning. They're just burning on one side of themselves, the intellect, the emotions. They're not burning on that other side. They're not connecting with that other side of themselves. They're a little lopsided, only able to work with the intellect and emotions, and usually motivated out of anger or greed. This is where the decisions are being made. Now, once again, I'm looking at the villains in our stories. Okay. So what's this have to do with you? What does it have to do? So what? Who cares? What does it have to do with you and me? These stories are designed as teaching tools. These are designed to help us guide ourselves in our daily lives. Believe it or not, that's what Batman and Spider-Man and all these things are doing. These are just Hollywood extrapolations of something that's been going on since the beginning of time. They are reflecting the hero's journey, the hero's story. And what makes those things popular, the ones that work, the ones that don't work, which of those movies works, which doesn't work? I'll tell you what, it's not the cinematography, it's not the special effects, it's the adherence, it's the resonating with the story, with the storyline of what makes a real hero, what makes a real villain, because that just grabs us at the gut level. And that's what makes these things successful. The ones that are really working are the ones that reflect the hero and the villain accurately in the human condition. All right. So no matter what the CGI is, the message is this: how to lead a balanced and heroic life. Because what these stories are trying to tell us, they're trying to communicate, and how they sell. How do these things sell? They're not selling us because of the glam. They're selling us because of the message. How to be a complete human, how to be a hero. I want to see myself in the hero, not in the villain. I want to know what is this story? What is this movie teaching me on how to lead a balanced and actually heroic life? Can I take something out of that movie? Can I take something out of that story? Can I apply it to my own situation? Because if I can, that's that box office, those numbers are going to be big. If I can't connect with that, it isn't going to work. And we have seen this. I'm going to bring this to home real quickly here. How to be a self-actualized, a fully actualized human being. That is what this villain hero battle is about. The villain is highlighting the imbalanced human. The hero is highlighting the balanced human. And it's not just this external struggle between bad guys and good guys. It's an internal struggle between those components of ourselves that want to just react out of the mind and the emotions, and those other components that are seeking to respond out of compassion and wisdom. But we don't know how. How do I do that? The stories are trying to teach us. We're trying to learn to live a full, actualized human life. We want to be flying with all the jets burning. We want to be maximizing our full potential. The stories are trying to teach us this. If we can see past some of the glam and some of the CGI and all this other thing, these are the same stories that have been told from the beginning of time. That's what this channel is about. If you go back to the beginning of the channel, what did I say in the beginning? Is that we're trying to help. What are we trying to explore here? How to lead a fully actualized human life, how to reach our full potential. So all the things we're exploring in this channel is about that. All right. So, done a lot of yapping here. This is a really great time for if you're watching tonight, is to weigh in on this. Weigh in on this about, heroic. What's your not only who's your favorite hero and villain, but I found that this perspective, teaching my students over years of looking at your life and looking at your situation as a potential hero's journey, has had a lot of benefit. And I know some of the folks that are watching tonight have maybe been some of that training, some of that education with me. Maybe jumping in on the chat right now would be beneficial to the others who are out there. Yeah, I've looked at myself in this perspective, and this is what has come to fruition. This is what's worked. So looking at your life, or even more potently, sometimes it's hard to look at your whole life. I mean, that becomes really kind of heavy lifting. Can I look at episodes of my life, certain vignettes of my life, as a hero's journey? I certainly can in mine. And maybe that can help you guide towards making better decisions in the moment and giving you a healthier and more effective perspective in the future. So let's look at this. Let's look at these stages of the hero's journey. And now, one of the things is that comes up is, I don't feel like a hero. I don't feel heroic. I'm not a hero. In fact, looking at myself as a hero, there's no way I can compare to Batman or Flash or whoever these other people are, or Odysseus or Achilles or whatever, Thor, or whatever hero is in your repertoire. But the purpose here, the goal here, is to see beyond the flash, the metaphor of the hero, and see yourself is that if we can really get at the core of what makes a hero, it's not having this huge hammer or big muscles or a cape or whatever it is. It's about a perspective. And if we adopt this perspective, this heroic perspective, this perspective of what's really intrinsic in being a hero, we realize it's not about all that. We have the capability. In fact, the human calling is to be the hero. We are the heroes in our own life. Courage. That's it. We're asked to do things. We're asked to work on faith. We're asked to face obstacles and tribulations in our life that, with nothing more than a hope or a glimmer or an example, that's heroic. It's not about how much weight you can push or how many enemies you can slay with a sword. This is about how you navigate your daily life. So let's look a little further. And I want you to just kind of go with me here. I'm going to unfold, as I see it, the stages of a hero's journey. And what I want you to do is, as I start to say these things and I start to unfold them, is see if there's a time in your life or an episode in your life or a vignette in your life, or maybe where you are right now, that seems to resonate with what I'm saying. It doesn't have to be your whole life story, as if it were a novel. It could be just one chapter of your life. All right. So there are 3 stages in this hero's journey as I see it. The first one is this pursuit of self-understanding. The second one is going to be this stage of self-transformation. And the last one is self-realization or transcendence. Now just go with me. Self-realization or transcendence. I'm going to explain each one of these. And as I explain it, I want you to really drop back and see how this resonates in your life. Because being a hero is not about the glam of the outside of it. The real heroes in the human condition are the silent heroes. And we're going to see that. It's not about being thrust into some incredible world scenario, a war or a famine or a revolution or something like that, but it's about the small heroic moves we make every day. This hero's journey is usually a combination of an inner journey and an outer journey. Very often the hero has to go outside of themselves. We see the hero going out on a quest, out on a mission, out on an adventure. But ultimately, it draws them inward into a discovery of answering questions for themselves. It becomes an inner journey. Sometimes that journey is planned by the hero. All right? The hero goes off on a quest. The Knights of the Round Table, they picked up their shield and sword, and I'm going to go after the Holy Grail, this chalice that Jesus used at the Last Supper. And there's this myth that we're gonna be big old knights, and we're all strong, and we're powerful, and we're gonna go out and quest after this thing. Okay, that's pretty classic. But many of the most potent, most significant heroes' journeys are the ones that life throws you into the adventure. I mean, even recently in Spider-Man, think about Spider-Man. Here's this kid, right? High school kid. He's kind of whatever he is, maybe a little nerdy. I don't know. And he gets bitten by a spider. He didn't ask for that. He got bitten by a spider, and all of a sudden, what happens? He gets this chemical thing happens, and he becomes Spider-Man. Now he's given this tool, this power, and he has to reconcile that power with his own inner workings, his own motivations, his own balancing himself, his ego self, and connecting with compassion and wisdom. So you see this. If you watch these movies, you see all the struggles he has. He's given this power. He was thrust into this. This kid didn't ask for that. He didn't ask for that. He didn't pick up his sword and shield and go out and look for it. But the story is saying, here's a guy who's minding his own business, and all of a sudden he's thrown into a heroic situation. How does he answer the call? That's huge. We also see it, if you want to retrograde a little bit, a few generations back, we can look at The Wizard of Oz, Dorothy. Dorothy didn't ask to be plucked out of Kansas by a tornado. It picked her up and threw her in Oz, in the story. So she was plucked out of Kansas and plucked into a hero's journey. So what does that tell us? It tells us that this is how probably most of us, I know from my own personal experience, how most of us are thrust into a hero's journey. It's not about consciously putting on a uniform or putting on some sort of accoutrement to be a hero. But life calls us to be heroic every day. Every day. Life calls us to be heroic. It might be getting fired from a job. It might be all of a sudden you're a parent, becoming a parent. It might be losing a loved one. It might be losing or gaining a large sum of money, or even being diagnosed with a disease. All of these kinds of life scenarios can thrust you into a hero's journey. This is what these stories are telling us. Life puts us into circumstances that calls upon us to be heroes or villains. We have a choice. And these stories illustrate how choices are made on a balanced or an imbalanced fashion. Now, for me personally, I've been called many times, as you probably have. One of my journeys started, one of my hero's journeys, if you will. I was in the Army for 11 years, and due to constant crippling stress, I had to resign from the Army and pivot and become a holistic body worker. And I taught meditation and yoga. I pivoted, and life had put me in this place of I had to pivot and make a choice. Was I going to continue to live what ultimately I saw as a villainous life and pivot to something that was a little more on the lines of a heroic life? Not to put myself up on a pedestal, but you understand it's a movement towards living more heroically than moving out of and responding out of a different part of myself. Another journey for me was when I became a parent. There was a hero's journey. Now, it wasn't unexpected, it was planned, but regardless. You become a parent, you have to pivot, you have to change, and you have to change your perspective and change your paradigm. Change where you are making decisions from. That was 31 years ago. I became a parent. 3.5 years ago, I had to do it again as a grandparent. Life called me to choose a heroic or non-heroic path. How did that look? What did I use as my litmus test? How did I make a determination on how to do what was right action? I went to my stories. I went to how did the hero choose? What was the paradigm? What was the process the hero chose to choose right action? Every day of our life, every day of our life, this is the human condition. Every day of our life is a choice to live heroically. Some of us, that is in our face. If you're dealing with a terminal illness or an extreme life circumstance, it's in your face. But those of us that lead what we call beige lives, kind of monochromatic, not so dramatic, we're still asked on a daily basis to live heroically. How? How can I make that choice? So just to review, the first stage was self-understanding. So let's look at that first stage of the hero's journey as self-understanding. What does that mean? This is the beginning where, let's say you get thrust into a situation. Let's just something you didn't choose. Let's say, look at my situation. Let's say I'm thrown into parenthood. I have to redefine who I am. I'm asking, who am I? The hero is asking, who am I? What's my identity? I was this guy over here, and all of a sudden, I'm a totally different person. I wasn't a father 5 minutes ago. Now, 10 minutes. Now I'm a father. I have to redefine who I am. I'm redefining who I am. What's my true nature? Where's my home? What's my center? What's my purpose? You see how life can throw us upside down and make us re-examine ourselves. What's right action? What's the quest? What's the object of my journey now? And I look at some of these iconic stories. I know when I became a father and became a grandfather, and other times in my life when I've changed roles, I had to say, okay, who am I now? I've just changed my role. What's required of me? What's my center? Where's my home? What's my platform from working? What's my purpose? What's my direction? What am I trying to move towards? Just on on a big scale, how do these stories teach us? That's my personal experience. But think about even Star Wars. I think Star Wars is one of the great, and it's still relevant because it's still in the media. It's still in the movies. But Star Wars, he got Luke Skywalker. What was he looking for? Here he is, this young kid. He's out looking for, who am I? He was looking for what? The classic, I'm looking for my father. The father represents your identity in these hero stories. He was going out in search of himself. He was on a quest. Where's my home? Where's my center? He didn't feel at home on that, what was it, Tatooine or wherever the heck he was, where he was farming and whatever. He didn't feel at home there. What was my center? Where's my grounding? What's my purpose? He's on this search. What's my purpose? What am I supposed to do? I am driven to now reevaluate my life, and what am I doing? What is the object of my quest? And of course, the whole story unfolds and gives him all that, doesn't it? The whole Star Wars, million versions of that's come out since. The hero is not one who is out to save other people. This is the other thing I want to go back to, just to back up for a second. The hero goes out to go in. We are not heroic in just going out and saving other people. So many of us, and I've made this mistake of raising my hand, to be the savior, to be the healer, to whatever it is you want to go out and do, is that we put on our cape and always going out to trying to fix other people and help other people. And very often they're not asking for our help. We are ultimately, if we're not helping ourselves, if we're not balancing ourselves, that's the hero's journey. The hero's journey is to go out to go in. Okay. Most of these practices are about going out. We go out on this journey. We get thrown into Kansas. We go out into the stars. We're looking for the force or whatever we're doing. But it's an internal journey. We think we're going out to save the world, but if we lose sight of the fact that it's a personal quest of balance, then we lose sight of the journey. We lose sight of the quest. And this is important. The hero goes out to go in. This is the message of our stories. And how do the stories serve us? Because we can get confused. We have these stories. We have these metaphors. We have these bigger than life examples to tell us, to teach us that the hero's journey is, yes, you're going out. And initially you're going out on this quest. You're going out to find your identity. You're going out to do these things. But ultimately that quest draws you back in. And it causes an inner transformation. And we're going to get to that. Does that make sense? Amigo? Okay. I just gave my examples, but this could be a new job, a new relationship, a new role you're about to read, a pivot in life, changing directions. Every time you think of times in your life where you've had to redefine yourself. I've redefined myself, geez, Mickey's, I don't know how many times in my life. I've redefined myself, but all of us do. Every time I redefine myself, I have to ask those questions. Who am I? Where's my home? Where's my center? What's my purpose? What am I trying to do here? That's the first step of the hero's quest. What's my ultimate purpose? Okay. So the second step of the hero's quest is what I call self-transformation. Remember that in these bigger than life examples, they're meant to help us reflect on our day-to-day experiences. Can we see the metaphor here? Can we see the connection between what the hero experiences in this big story and what I'm experiencing? How does the hero solve the problem? How do they make a decision? They're guiding me on how to make a decision in those elements of my life. So the second component of this hero's journey is this step of self-transformation. So we went into I'm searching. What am I searching for? This self-understanding. Who am I? It's the impetus. Where am I? Who am I? It's the impetus. It's the drive to get me out the door. Okay. And now self-transformation. So this is the journey itself. I'm on the road. I'm in the journey. I'm in the adventure. I'm in the act of being the parent or being in this new job or being in this new relationship. Okay. I'm in it now. It's around me. I'm totally invested. Now, I'm in this place where it's rich with potential for transformation. What does that mean? So this is the journey. This is the actual journey. This is the actual hero's journey. So this is where I ask myself, geez, what do I do next? What do I do? How do I know what the heck to do? I'm a parent for the first time. What in the F am I supposed to do now? I don't know. I've read 100 books. I've asked 100 people. They don't know my kids. These kids are crazy. I don't know what's going on with that. I'm in a new relationship. My partner's crazy. Or my partner, I don't understand this. I read all the books. It doesn't make sense. What's right action? What right meaning? What's balance? What's effective action? What do I do? Which way do I go? Where do I go for direction? This is that self-transformation place. This is where I start to identify, well, who are my allies? Who are my enemies? What are my obstacles? What's getting in my way? Now, from this big hero story perspective, I can see it more clearly. What are my tools? What are my weapons? What are my superpowers? Here, the hero may not be really aware of what their superpower is. And I want to go back to that in just a second. One of the things that's come up, and I had a question here just a moment ago. What happens? I'm talking about these stages, and what happens? This is assuming you assume the role of the hero, right? And what happens when we're called to do something heroic and we ignore the call? What happens when I'm called to parenthood and I say, nah, it ain't happening. I'm out of here. Or what happens when I'm called to do something really hard in life? I've got a dying parent, or I've got a really difficult situation, and I choose not to heed the call. I choose to avoid the hero journey. My personal experience is this. When life presents us with an opportunity to embark, to pick up the sword or the shield or whatever it is of the hero, when life presents us with the hero's journey and we decline that opportunity, it's neither bad nor good. But the universe is saying to us, this is what you need to grow. This is what you need to move in the direction of being a balanced human being. And if you ignore it, that's your choice. It will come back again. That challenge will come back to you another time. It has for me. If I pass on this opportunity to answer the call, I will be called again. And usually a little louder, and usually with a little bit more extreme circumstances. Because the universe is telling us this is what you need to be complete and balanced, a balanced human being. We're all called to the hero's journey to be self-actualized. We choose. We have free choice. We can say, not today. I'm not going to do it. It'll come back. You'll be called again. I can tell you stories. If I had more time tonight, I'd tell you more. So I've ignored the call. It's come back to me until I finally had the courage or I had the resources to answer the call. And it was a little tougher the second time around. I have a friend of mine who I've been working with through his alcohol addiction, and he's been through Al-Anon, and he said that in Al-Anon they're told that the universe, in that case God, speaks to them in a whisper, then a roar, and then with a 2x4. meaning that the universe speaks, or God, however you want to look at it, speaks to you. First of all, it calls you to the journey with a whisper. If you ignore the whisper, then the next calling is with a roar. And if you ignore the roar, the next time you get smacked in the head with a 2x4. Now, I'm going to tell you what, I've been smacked in the head more than once with a 2x4. Okay, I got scars. So we get better at learning when we're being called to the hero's journey, hopefully. So this next stage of self-transformation, what are our obstacles? How do I know what to make? How do I know to make a right decision? What are my tools? What are my superpowers? What are my weapons? What are my protectors, if you will? What are my strengths? Here, the hero may not be aware of their superpower, their ability, the real superpower of the hero. Now, this is important. If you're writing anything down, write this down. And I said it earlier. The real power of the superhero, the superpower, superpower of the superhero is this: their ability to access their source of compassion and wisdom, which is connection with the authentic self. Now, that's the deep philosophical realization of the hero's journey. We look at being able to hear the call and access that compassion. Some more times than not in the stories, the call very often is external. And we connect with this ability to connect with something bigger than ourselves. And I think of Star Wars again. In the beginning, what is it? Luke Skywalker he finds Obi-Wan Kenobi. So he's got this external figure of this Obi-Wan guy. And Obi-Wan represents the voice of the self, of the authentic self. He's the Force. He's the guy who's I'm gonna connect you with the Force. Whatever that is, right? But the Force really represents the awareness, this awareness of the authentic self. And so Luke's whole journey is learning how to flow with that force, flow with that, whatever he thinks that is. He's trying to figure out how to wield this thing. What do I do with it? What is the power of the force? Is it to be able to like sword fight better? Is it being able to second guess my enemy better? But he realizes that down the road, it's something even more significant. It's an intuitive power that's even more significant. And over time in this process, Luke Skywalker realizes that I can't rely on this external voice, this Obi-Wan figure. The teacher, the external teacher has to drop off. Hear me. The teacher has to drop off. That's the other message here. So in this process, so what happens? So in this transformation, this period, so the hero meets monsters and opposition and villains, and these are all metaphors for his inner fears and angers, these imbalances. We confront ourselves. We go on the journey of the hero, and now I'm thrusted. Who am I? And now I'm in this thing. I'm a parent, and it's like, oh my God, I have to deal with all of these parts of myself. I know going through parenthood and through grandparenthood, constantly having to confront with, anger or fear or frustration or resentment. All these things come up. These are the monsters. These are the bad guys, the villains that the hero has to go through, has to face. Darth Vader. Darth Vader is the ultimate metaphor. He's not even fully human. The part of ourselves that we're facing is not fully human. It's only a vestige of human. Human is this full range of motion to be not only intellect, but also heart. Darth Vader is all intellect. He's a machine, for God's sakes. My God. He's not even complete. He's a deformed human. Okay. So this is this part of the journey. And then the transformation begins. So the hero goes through this journey. He goes through this whole, or she goes through this whole adventure. And eventually, now I'm going to have to really kind of just draw in and cut to the chase here. Eventually, the hero has to realize that it's not about him or her anymore. The journey is no longer about them. the journey it shifts. This is the shift. This is where the shift happens and moves into the second part. It becomes about other people. You think about Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz. So Dorothy goes out and she's trying to get back to Kansas. I don't know why anybody wants to go back to Kansas, but she wanted to go back to Kansas. I grew up in Kansas City, so I have some tread there on that. But anyway, so Dorothy wants to go back to Kansas, and it becomes all about her in the beginning. It's about her going back. But eventually in her journey, it is no longer about her. She's helping these other folks. She's helping the Tin Man and the Scarecrow and the Lion and all this. And she's all about them getting on their journey. She's transforming. She's getting out of herself. She's surrendering to something bigger than herself. This is part of the transformation of the hero. This is how when in my own experience raising children, I got out of all my resistance about how this is screwing up my life or how this was affecting my life. And I realized that I'm surrendering to something bigger. I'm surrendering to a cause bigger than me. It's about other people. It's about raising the children. It's about a bigger thing than me. It's not just about what you're about. And this brings us into the almost last phase, this idea of self-realization, this hero going into this phase of self-realization. I call it transcendence, to go beyond. This is where that transformation is complete. This is where the hero has completely shifted. This is where the hero is actually formed. And normally speaking, this is where it gets messy. This is where it gets hard. This is where it's totally effed up. And this is where we can run away. In the struggle, in this transformation period, for most heroes, for most human beings, this is where we fall into the abyss. We fall into that dark night of the soul. The hero struggles, encounters the monsters, encounters the struggles, encounters the demons, or whatever it is. It could be like in Lord of the Rings, Gandalf the Grey encounters the Balrog. If you guys are with me on this, if you're kind of geeking out with me right now on this, thank you. And Gandalf falls into the abyss with this demon monster thing, whatever it is, the Balrog, and he's Gandalf the Grey. He's pretty powerful, but he's not complete. He's gray. And he goes in, and we lose sight of him for a while. He falls into that dark night of the soul, and have you? I have. I've known the dark night of the soul. I've been in those places. I've been in those places where there was a momentary breakdown to a breakthrough. Sort of a Jesus take the wheel moment. It's a place of surrender where it results in this momentary ability to let go. It's a turnaround point of the heart. You know, in reading some of the things of Joseph Campbell, the mythologist, he talks about a real story, where this policeman is pulling up and he sees this guy about ready to jump off a bridge. He's about ready to go over, and the cop goes up and he runs up and he throws himself onto this guy who's just about over the edge, almost going over the edge himself, barely saving both of those lives, and pulls the guy back. And later on, the cop was interviewed and asked, "What were you thinking? Why did you do that?" And in that moment, not unlike that dark night of the soul, that momentary hitting bottom, that cop said that I knew that if he went over and died, I would die too. That what happened to him the guy who was jumping was going to happen to me. For that moment, that policeman had moved out of the field of opposites and moved into a state of communion, of compassion to suffer with another person. There was no difference. What happened to one happened to the other. That is the transformation the hero makes in that journey. And when Gandalf came out of that fight with the Balrog, he came out as Gandalf the Grey, just to go back to you all who want to geek out on the Lord of the Rings, and he came out as Gandalf the White. He transformed. He transformed that illusion of opposites. What happens to one happens to all of us. And that was that instantaneous, although possibly temporary, connection with the self, with the authentic self. That connection with that level of compassion and wisdom. That's the transformation of the hero. We go through these things. We have that capacity in each of us every day in the small, what we believe are small challenges of life, but they are really large, heroic challenges. And what happens is then, where do we go from there? What does the hero do when they come out? What do you do when you come out of that? What do you do with that? Well, you bring back the treasure. You bring back the complete hero's journey is one of bringing back what you have learned, what you've experienced, and sharing it with others. What did you teach? What did you learn? And how does it change your life to teach others? It's not so much about what happens to you specifically. It's rather how you respond to it. Am I responding? Am I reacting? Am I responding heroically, or am I reacting out of just my intellect and my emotions? Now, how do I do that? How can I train myself to do that? It doesn't just normally, for many of us, for most of us, it doesn't happen overnight. We do have to prepare ourselves. We have to prepare our minds. We have to prepare our lives to meet life heroically. How do we do that? Well, actually, that's what I do. It's one of the things that I've done here with this channel, and as a matter of fact, developed this 4-step meditative, contemplative practice called the 4-step path, PATH. It's here on this channel. If you go after this talk, this chat tonight, if you go back to the channel, if you go and you look at the playlists and you look at those videos about the path, it's going to teach you how to prepare yourself to lead a heroic life. That's what it's designed for. How do I connect with the compassionate part of myself when necessary? How do I connect with the wisdom platform of my life when it's necessary? How do I know, okay, anger, resentment, these things are going to come up. It's part of who we are, the ego self, but how do I navigate that? And how do I then not let that take over, but how do I access the heroic part of myself, the authentic self? I call it the observer. The observer could possibly even be renamed. I might even rename it and call it the hero. How do I access the hero part of myself? So if you go back to these videos on the channel, you'll see the 4-step path. And that 4-step path will start to train you. Now, what I really would help me is that if you go to those videos and you comment and you look at them, you practice what I asked you to practice, and you come back and you comment right there on those videos. How did that work for you? Another way to do that is to go back to, if you go to my webpage, which is warnerhealingguidance.com. It's the name of the business here, if you will, warnerhealingguidance.com. You'll actually get a text version of that meditative process, the path, the hero's path. It's going to teach you step by step how to access the heroic part of you, how to start to build a perspective that is going to allow you to respond to life more heroically, less reactively, less villainously if you want. It's big stuff. This is what we're working towards. This is what we're working towards. Is we are heroes. The human condition is heroic. You know, the Greek gods, I said this in the last video, the last maybe a couple chats ago, is the Greek, you know, the Greeks, the Greek gods were, you know, allegedly jealous of man, and why. The Greek gods lived forever. Every day was just the same old day, you know, for eternity. It was boring. But humans had a short life. Every day was one step to the finish. And humans had to not only draw the nectar out of life and draw the essence out of every day, make the most of every day, but it called upon us to be heroes. The gods could not be heroes. Humans are the only ones who can be heroes because the human condition calls us to heroic living. That is our destiny, is to live heroically. Because we have those frailties, because we have a clock is ticking, we have that capacity to live heroically. So I'd love to hear your chat. Now, if tonight you, I know I've given you a lot, probably a whole lot to digest and think about. Don't expect all sorts of comments right now. Listen to this, review it, go back to it. It's going to be recorded. It is recorded. It'll be up on the website, the YouTube channel rather, tomorrow. Share it with your friends, digest it, and then get back with me with your comments throughout the next week. Next week, we're going to have another topic. If you go to my email, or my website, my warnerhealingguidance.com, and you go ahead and give me your email address, what that's going to do is you're going to get on my email list, and what you'll do is then you'll be able to get a sneak preview of the next week's upcoming chat, what the topic's going to be, and maybe some other stuff. You'll get all sorts of other content as well. I do hope, if you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, please do. If you've got a Gmail account, please subscribe. The more you subscribe, the more you share, the more interactive you are, the more juice we get with YouTube, and the more able I'm going to be, and Rob's going to be, my producer. We're going to working together here to keep giving you this content, keeping the discussion open and flowing. Hopefully, you can join us next week. Please invite others to watch. And remember, the chat is recorded. So I want to thank you for being with us this evening. Please share your comments, digest the information. Let me know how your hero's journey is going. And until we meet again, good night.